There were 40 men with torches at the edge of the ashwood, and one of them had a rope. And the rope was for me. Harboring the beast that had been killing children all winter is a hanging matter. I want to be clear that everyone in that clearing believed, absolutely and with good reason, that I had spent 4 months hiding the monster that had emptied their barns and put 2 small graves in the Heatherby churchyard. They were not cruel men. They were frightened fathers, and I had a wolf the size of a plow horse standing behind me with its hackles up, and I was standing between them and it with my hands open and nothing in them but the truth, which is the worst thing to be holding when 40 frightened men have already decided. Before you hang me, I said, walk to the Corley pasture with me. It's a 1/4 mile. Look at the last kill with me, and if I'm wrong, I'll put my own neck in the rope and save you the trouble. The reeve, at the front, with the torch, said, there is nothing to see at the Corley pasture but a dead ewe and a set of wolf tracks. I know, I said. That's the problem. I'll show you. 16 weeks earlier, I had found a dying wolf at the edge of my own woodpile and given him the heel of a loaf because he looked at me like he'd already given up on my saying yes. My name is Hedda, and I lived alone at the edge of the ashwood, which is a thing people find sad and which I did not. I was 27 that winter. My father was the trapper at Heatherby, and he taught me the woods before he died, which meant I could read a track the way other people read a face, and it meant I lived at the forest edge in his cottage on the strength of his old rights, and it meant the village tolerated me the way a village tolerates a woman who knows things it would rather not think about. A trapper's daughter is useful and unsettling in about equal measure. I set snares, and I dressed hides, and I kept to myself. And I had done it for 4 years, and I was lonelier than I let myself count. It had been a bad winter before the wolf. I want that in early. Something had been killing livestock across 3 villages since the first frost. Barns opened, sheep gone, and then, in the worst weeks, worse than sheep. 2 children out of the Ashwood villages, a boy from Corley and a girl from Heatherby, taken from the very edge of their own homes. The Crown put a bounty on wolves the width of the territory, a gold piece a head, and the hunters came, and the whole of the Ashwood turned into a thing to be frightened of, which it had never been to me. So when I found a wolf at my woodpile in the 3rd week of the cull, I understood that I was looking at the most dangerous thing I could possibly have on my doorstep, and not because of its teeth. He was enormous, and he was dying. There was a wound down his flank that had gone bad, and a hind leg that had been in a trap. I know a trap wound. I have made 1,000 of them, and this was not mine, and it was not any honest trapper's. It was a great cruel gin trap of the kind the bounty men used, and he had pulled himself out of it and left a good deal of himself behind. He should have been dead. He was looking at me with an expression I have only ever otherwise seen on people, which was the specific flat exhaustion of a creature that has decided the next bad thing is simply going to happen and it is too tired to run from it. I should have called the hunters. A gold piece is a gold piece, and I was not rich, and that wolf was, by every account in 3 villages, the death of 2 children. I gave him the heel of a loaf instead. I did it because of the tracks. That is the thing nobody understands, and the thing this whole story turns on, so I will say it plainly now. I am a trapper's daughter. I had seen the kill sites all winter. I could not help it. You cannot unknow the woods, and there was something wrong with them, and I had not let myself look at what, because looking was dangerous. But I had a dying wolf at my woodpile, and I looked at his feet, and his feet did not match the tracks at the kills. I could not prove anything with a heel of bread, but I could not hang a creature on evidence I already doubted, so I fed him, and I backed away, and I went inside, and I did not sleep. He was still there in the morning. The bread was gone. I fed him every night after that, from the 3rd week of the cull until the thaw. I did not miss one. I want you to understand what that cost, because it was not sentiment. It was a capital crime, performed nightly, 4 months, feeding the thing the whole territory was hunting, and if anyone had seen me, I would have been hanged for it, and been thought to have deserved it. He got stronger slowly. The flank closed. The leg healed crooked, and he favored it and always would. And somewhere around the 5th week he stopped waiting for me to go inside and started eating while I was there. And somewhere around the 7th he let me look at the trap wound on his leg, and by the turn of the year I was cleaning it with my father's salve, while an animal that had killed nothing let a trapper's daughter hold its ruined foot in her 2 hands. I talked to him, because I talk to everything in those woods and always have. I did not tell him secrets. I want to be clear about that, because I have heard the way these stories go, and this is not that one. I told him about the weather, and the snares, and which of the Heatherby men had cheated me on a hide, and I called him Big Gray, because he was big, and he was gray, and I am not a fanciful woman. And I scratched behind his ears. That is the part I did not think about until much later, and it is the part that turned out to matter most. Every night, when the bowl was empty, the chipped blue bowl that had been my mother's, which I gave to a wolf because it seemed a waste to keep good crockery from something that came back every night, I scratched behind his ears, the way you do, without thinking, the way you would any dog. And Big Gray, the most dangerous thing in the ashwood, would lean his enormous head into my hand and close his eyes, and I thought nothing of it at all, because I did not yet know that no living creature had done that to him in his entire life. I was less alone that winter than I had been in 4 years, and I did not let myself notice until it was far too late to be sensible about it. That is the plain shape of what happened to me, and I have stopped being embarrassed by it. I lived at the edge of a wood, and I set snares, and I dressed hides, and I spoke to no one from one market day to the next. And the winter of the cull I had, for the first time since my father died, something that was waiting for me at dusk. I would come in off the trapline cold to the bone, and there would be a great gray shape at the woodpile, and I would say, "There you are, then," and fill the bowl. And the saying of it, "There you are," became the warmest 4 minutes of my day. And I am not proud of how much I needed them, and I will not lie about it either. He learned my routine. That is the thing that ought to have told me, and did not, because I did not want it to. A wolf does not learn a routine. A wolf comes when there is food, and goes when there is not. But Big Gray started meeting me at the trapline's edge in the afternoons, favoring the ruined leg and walking me home, a 1/4 mile through the dark, at my shoulder, matching my pace, which is not a thing an animal does, and I told myself he had simply worked out where the food lived, because the truth was too strange to hold and too good to give up. And once, in the deep of it, in the worst week of the cold, I sat down against the woodpile with my hands too stiff to work, and I cried. About my father, about the 2 children, about a winter that had turned my own woods into a gallows. And a wolf the size of a plow horse lay down against my side and put his head in my lap and stayed there until I was done, and did not move, and was warm, and I have since been told by the man that this was the first time in his life he had ever comforted anyone, and that he did not know he could, and that he has never forgotten a second of it. I thought I was keeping a wounded animal alive. I was, in fact, being kept alive right back, and neither of us said so, because one of us could not talk and the other one had forgotten how. The man was at my door on the morning of the thaw. I want to describe it exactly. I came out at dawn to fill the bowl, and there was no wolf. There was a man sitting on my chopping block, and he was enormous, and he was mostly clothed in a way that suggested he had not planned the timing of this, and there was a scar down one side of his neck and jaw, pale, healed, wrong-shaped, in exactly the place I had cleaned a trap wound all winter. I knew him before he said a word. Not his face, I had never seen his face. I knew the way he held the ruined leg, and I knew the scar, and I knew the eyes, which were the eyes that had looked at me over a woodpile and decided I was going to say no. You, I said. Me, his voice was rough, like a man who did not use it much. Hedda, I owe you. You're a man. I'm the Alpha King of Oak Hollow, he said, which was somehow both an answer and not, and which I did not properly hear for several seconds because I was busy with the first part. You could shift, I said, the whole time. You could stand up and be a man the whole time, and you let me. I put you in a trap? No. I took you out of A. I scratched your ears. I called you Big Gray. I gave you my mother's bowl. I know, said the King of Oak Hollow, and put his face in his hands. I did not let him in that morning. I want that on the record. A woman does not let an enormous, strange man into her cottage at dawn, no matter what she has been calling him all winter. And I stood in my doorway and he stood in my yard. A careful distance he did not close. And I was angrier than I have ever been in my life, and I could not have told you which part I was angriest about. How long could you have shifted? Since about the 6th week. He did not look away from it, which I gave him credit for even then. The wound would not let me before that. After that, I could have stood up any morning and told you what I was. Then why didn't you? And King Orin of Oak Hollow said the thing that undid the whole of my anger, which was extremely inconvenient of him. Because the moment I am a man, he said, I am the king, and no one has ever once been kind to me as the king. Do you understand what I am telling you? I have been the most feared thing in this territory since I was 19 years old. Everyone who has ever touched me wanted something. Everyone who has ever fed me was paid to. And a trapper's daughter who did not know what I was gave me her mother's bowl and scratched behind my ears every night for 4 months and asked for nothing, and I could not. His voice went. I could not give it up. I knew it was a lie, and I let it stand, because it was the only time in my life anyone has cared for me without a single reason to, and I am not proud of it, and I would do it again, and those two things are both true. I did not have anything to say to that. I have never had anything to say to it. I have thought about it every day since, and I still do not. I have to tell you the rest of it, he said, and you are going to want to hit me again, and I am going to let you, and then I need your help, because you are the only person in this territory who can see the thing I got my throat torn open trying to see. I did not know yet what he had been doing in my woods, with no guards and no crown, or who had put the trap on the King of Oak Hollow and left him to die at the edge of my village. If you want to find out what a trapper's daughter can read in the snow that a whole territory spent a winter refusing to look at, and what it costs to say it out loud to 40 men with torches, stay with me. What Big Gray had seen the night they caught him is the reason 2 children are in the ground, and it is not what anyone in Heatherby believes. He told me over the next hour, on my chopping block, at a careful distance, and it went like this. A king of Oak Hollow, he said, learns fast that he only ever sees his territory through the men who profit from what he sees. So once a season, in the winter, he slips his own court and runs the Ashwood alone as a wolf. No guard, no name, nothing anyone can perform at, because it is the one way he has ever found to see the truth of his own land, and because it is the one time he is ever allowed to be no one. And this winter, he had gone looking for the killings. Because the reports that reached his hall did not smell right to him, 3 villages of dead livestock and 2 dead children, a fortune paid out in wolf bounties, and something underneath it he could not name from a throne. So he went as the wolf to find the truth of it. And he found it. And they caught him finding it, and they put a gin trap on the Alpha King of Oak Hollow, and left him to die in the snow, because he had seen the thing, and a wolf that had seen the thing was simply one more wolf in a winter full of dead ones. Seen what? I said. That the wolves aren't doing it, said Oren. That there is no wolf. I watched a kill made, Hedda, at the Corley pasture, the night they trapped me. I watched two men open a sheepfold and take what they wanted and cut the carcass they left to look like a wolf did it, and then walk a dead wolf's paw through the snow around it on a stick. His jaw worked, and the scar moved when it did. They have been staging every one of them. For the bounty, and for something worse than the bounty. And I saw the men's faces, and one of them was the Crown's own forest reeve, and the other I did not know. Something in me went very still and very clear. I had known. That is the thing I have to live with. I had known since the third week, in the part of me that reads tracks and cannot help it, that the kills were wrong, that a wolf drags and a wolf gorges and a wolf leaves a particular ruin, and these kills were tidy, butchered, chosen, a good animal taken away whole and a poor one left cut about to tell a story. I had known, and I had not let myself finish the thought. Because the thought was too big and too dangerous, and I was one woman at the edge of a wood, and it was easier to feed a wolf in secret than to stand up in a square and say the thing. And 2 children were dead. The children, I said, and I could hardly get it out. A wolf didn't know. Oren's voice was very quiet. A wolf did not take those children. And I do not know yet what did, but I know it walks on 2 feet, and I know it wanted a territory too frightened of its own forest to ask questions, and I know that a gold piece ahead has put every hungry man in 3 villages into the ashwood, killing every wolf they can find, so that no one is left who could ever be seen not doing it. I sat down on my own step. Here is what it was, and it took the 2 of us the rest of the thaw to be sure of it. Because being sure was the only thing that would matter. The ashwood was worth a great deal of money to the right man, and it was worth nothing to the Crown as it stood. Because it was common forest, Heatherby's Commons, and Corley's and Larch Ends, 400 years of villages with the ancient right to run pigs in it, and cut wood in it, and live at its edge, which is exactly the right my father held, and I held after him. You cannot sell a forest that 400 years of villages have the right to. You cannot cut it for timber. You cannot clear it for a road. Not while the villages hold the commons. Unless the forest becomes a danger, unless it fills with man-eating wolves and empties itself of villagers too frightened to stay. Unless the Crown, in its mercy, must at last enclose the ashwood and clear it for everyone's safety, and grant the timber, and the road, and the cleared land to the man who had so helpfully managed the crisis. Reeve Haldane ran the bounty. Reeve Haldane staged the kills. And Reeve Haldane was being paid, we found it, in the end, in the bounty accounts, which is the only place a careful man ever leaves himself, by a timber interest that had already been promised the ashwood the moment the commons were dissolved. He had killed 2 children to make a forest too frightening to keep, and he had spent a winter paying frightened men to murder every wolf in it, so that the story would hold, and he had trapped a king who wandered in on the truth and left him for a wolf's death in the snow. He had not, he would have said, done anything that was not the Crown's own policy. A bounty is lawful. A cull is lawful. An enclosure for public safety is lawful. He had simply arranged the facts that made the lawful things happen, and taken the gratitude, and it was all entirely defensible, right up until a trapper's daughter walked 40 men to a dead ewe in the snow. Haldane moved before we were ready, because Haldane heard that the trapper's daughter had been asking about kill sites, and a careful man hears everything. He did the simplest thing, and it very nearly worked, and it was this: he told the village I had a wolf. He did not have to lie. That was the horror of it, the same horror I have found under every one of these stories. I did have a wolf. I had been feeding an enormous wolf at my woodpile all winter, and half of Heatherby had half seen it and told themselves they hadn't. All Haldane had to do was say it out loud, that the trapper's daughter, who everyone always knew was strange, who lived too close to the wood, had been harboring the beast that took their children, and let 4 months of a village's fear find its shape. They came at dusk, 40 men, torches and the reeve at the front of them with a rope, to the edge of the ashwood where I stood at my own woodpile with Big Gray behind me. Because he had come back that night as the wolf on purpose. Because we had known they would come, and a king in his own skin gets a hearing, and a wolf gets a hearing, and a trapper's daughter alone gets a rope. Before you hang me, I said, walk to the Corley pasture with me. The reeve said there was nothing to see but a dead ewe and wolf tracks, and I said I knew, and that was the problem. And I want to tell you that walking a 1/4 mile through the dark at the head of 40 men who have brought a rope for you is the longest walk there is. And I have done some long ones. I showed them the ewe by torchlight. I am a trapper's daughter, and my father taught me the woods, and I read that kill sight out loud to 40 frightened men the way you would read a letter. I showed them the throat, cut, not torn, a clean draw of a knife where a wolf crushes and worries. I showed them the carcass, butchered, the good meat gone, taken away whole, which a wolf never does. A wolf gorges where it kills. I showed them the belly, opened after death, cold, no blood driven into the ground the way a living kill drives it. And then I showed them the tracks. Look at the gait, I said. A wolf's track has a story. Fore and hind fall in a line, one paw covering the last, because a wolf that big is always saving itself, always moving to move again. These don't. These are pressed. Each one square and deep and separate, the same depth, no push-off, because these were made by a hand, with a paw on a stick, one print at a time, by a man walking backward around a dead sheep in the snow. I stood up. There is no wolf that made this. There has never been a wolf that made any of them. I have read every kill this winter, and not one of them was ever a wolf. And I did not say so because I was frightened, and 2 children are dead because a great many of us were frightened, and I am done being frightened tonight because you have brought a rope to my door, and I would rather hang for the truth than for a lie. The torches did not move for a long time. And then Big Gray, who had followed at the edge of the trees, walked out into the torchlight in front of 40 armed men, which is the bravest thing I have ever seen anything do, and stood beside me, and shifted. I have been told the sound the village made was not like anything anybody there had heard before. I would not know. I was watching the reeve's face, and the reeve's face told me everything, because a man who has left a king to die in a trap does not expect that king to stand up out of a wolf in a clearing and look at him. I saw you at the Corley pasture, said the Alpha King of Oak Hollow, to his own forest reeve in front of 40 men. The night you put a trap on me and left me for the crows. You did not know what you were leaving in the snow. You should have made sure. It came apart fast after that, the way it does. Haldane ran and did not get far. A forest full of men who have just learned they spent a winter murdering the wrong thing is not a forest a man runs through easily. The bounty accounts were in Ulf's hands by the next night, the king's second, who had spent 4 months not knowing whether his king was alive, and who I am told did not speak civilly to me for some time on account of it, which I have entirely forgiven, because a man who loves his king that much is a man I would want at my own back. The timber interest that had been promised the Ashwood spent a very bad year. The enclosure never happened. The commons stand, Heatherby's and Corley's and Larch End's, 400 years of the right to run pigs and cut wood and live at the edge, unbroken, and there is a stone marker at the forest edge now that says why, and I helped choose the words on it, and I cannot read them without my throat doing a thing. The children could not be given back. That is the cost this story cannot pay, and I will not pretend otherwise. 2 small graves in 2 churchyards, put there to make a forest frightening, and no verdict, and no restored commons, and no king standing up out of a wolf will fill them. Haldane hanged, in the end, for the children, which was the one thing in the whole affair that was a clean and nameable crime. But a hanging is not a child, and I have sat with both those mothers. And there is nothing in this for them, but the truth. And the truth is a cold thing to be left holding. And my cost was real, though it was the smallest of them. I had harbored a wolf during a cull, which is a crime whatever the wolf turned out to be, and the law had to be got round, and it was got round. But there was a season where the village that had brought a rope to my door had to decide what I was now, the strange trapper's daughter who had hidden the beast, or the strange trapper's daughter who had read the snow when no one else would. Villages do not decide a thing like that quickly. I lived at the edge of Heatherby for another year being looked at, and some of it was the old fear, and some of it was a new thing I did not have a word for, and both were uncomfortable, and only one of them got better. Orrin asked me in the summer, and he did it the way I had come, by then to expect of him. He came to the cottage, not with a court and not with a crown, as a man, alone, having ridden the Ashwood the honest way for once. And he stood in my yard at a careful distance and did not close it. And he said, I have thought a long time about how to ask you this, and every version was a king asking, and I could not make it not be that. So I have done the only thing I could think of. Your father's rights die with you. A trapper's holding is a life right. You cannot pass it. You cannot sell it. The moment you go it goes back to the crown, and you have nothing that is yours. He put a paper on my chopping block. That is a grant of the cottage, and the wood right in fee, yours, and your heirs. Forever. Held in your own name, and not in mine. Restored to the old kind of right that cannot be taken. It is done. It is signed. You are, as of this morning, a woman who holds her own land and answers to no one, including me. And now that you cannot lose anything by refusing me, I would like to ask. You've made me a landholder to ask me a question. I have made you a woman who can say no to a king, said Orrin of Oakhollow, because the last woman who was kind to me thought I was astray, and I will not ask this one for anything, while she has a single reason to be afraid of what I am. I kissed him first, in my own yard, on my own land, with a chipped blue bowl still sitting by the door out of pure habit. It was brief, and it was warm, and it settled something in me that had been braced since I was a girl watching my father set traps, and learning that the woods only feed the people brave enough to read them. 3 years on, I still live at the edge of the Ashwood, on my own land, which I go out of my way to mention to anyone who will listen. I am at Oakhollow Keep as much as the cottage, which was a fight and a compromise, and about which the council was extremely tedious. And I have not given up the woods, and I will not. And there is now a small and put-upon party of guardsmen whose job is to accompany the Luna of Oakhollow while she checks her snares, and who have learned to read a track passably well, because I have made them, and who complain about it constantly, and who would, I think, be quite offended if I stopped. Ulf forgave me. It took a year. He came to the cottage and stood in the yard and said that I had been the only person in the territory doing his job for him all winter, which was the closest that man will ever come to an embrace, and we have been what I can only call fond ever since, in the manner of 2 people who both love an impossible man, and have agreed not to say so. Orrin still runs the Ashwood as a wolf. Less alone now, I go, on the nights I can, on 2 feet, and he does not perform anything at me, and I do not perform anything at him, and it is still the one time either of us is no one, except now there are 2 of us being no one together, which is a better thing than either of us expected to get. And he still leans his head into my hand when I scratch behind his ear, the ruined one, the one the trap took a notch out of that, healed into a scar he carries on the man as well as the wolf. He pretends he does not. He is the most feared alpha alive, and he claims, with enormous dignity, that he merely tolerates it. His wolf gives him away every single time. The way his wolf has given him away from the very first night, and I have decided that of the two of them the wolf was always the honest one, and that I am glad, on the whole, that I fed the wolf before I ever met the king. I still keep the bowl by the door, the chipped blue one, my mother's, that I gave to a stray because it seemed a waste to keep good crockery from something that came back every night. I fill it, sometimes out of habit, and a very large man who could eat at a king's own table comes and finds it there and does not say anything about it. Because we have both understood from the start that the bowl was never really about the food. I still wonder about the 40 men, honestly, more than I wonder about Haldane. Haldane wanted a forest and killed children to get it, and there is no mystery in a man like that, only a horror. But 40 frightened fathers spent a winter murdering every wolf in the ashwood, gladly, believing they were protecting their own. And every one of them was doing the bravest and most loving thing he knew how to do, and every one of them was Haldane's hand without knowing it. Tell me in the comments what you would have done with a gold piece ahead and 2 children in the ground and a wood full of wolves everyone swore were the cause. I have never once been able to be sure I would have been the one who looked at the snow. I only ever was because my father taught me to, and because a dying wolf gave me a reason to stop looking away, and I do not think that makes me braver than the 40. I think it makes me luckier. Comment the bowl if you want to hear what Oren's wolf did the first time Ulf tried to take the chipped blue bowl away to have it replaced with something a Luna ought to own. And if you want more nights like this one, a king who could only be cared for as a stray, a trapper's daughter who read the snow when a whole territory would not, and a chipped blue bowl that mattered more than a crown, stay close. There is more of Oak Hollow left to tell. Where are you listening from tonight? I would love to know.